What was the name of your little lawn mowing company?
The Lawn Wranglers?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Road runner, going faster miles an hour. Gonna drive past the Stop and Shop with the radio on. I'm in love with Massachusetts, and the neon when it's going outside.
Welcome to Wrangler RoundUP, episode 7. It could be 7.5, we lost track. But I'm Larry O'Neill, this is
Chad Ledley,
and this is
Harvey Lewis.
All right, and we're down here in beautiful Circleville at Hargis Lake.
Hargis Lake, which is behind us. You may or may not be able to see that. It's quite stunning.
It's A.W. Marion State Park, and it definitely has some nice trails just for being a local spot.
Going to hopefully explore those later, so we'll keep you posted. As we said, we are here with the man, Harvey Lewis. We are so happy to be here. Ultra racing phenom with countless races under his belt. This is your introduction.
Thank you.
I spent a lot of time on this.
Oh, man, I appreciate it.
He ran his first marathon at age 15. Feel free to correct me if any of this is inaccurate.
No, you're right.
He's been competing since about the mid-90s, winning many of the races that he's entered. Distances ranging from 50K to 24-hour races to 250-plus miles, well beyond. Some of these races include the well-known Badwater, 135, Big Dog's Backyard Ultra, Championships, which you now hold a world record for. See, I'm telling you things that you don't know. Having covered 354 miles in 85 hours. In the soon-to-be Leadville, which is coming up. Harvey Lewis is a behemoth endurance athlete and just all-around amazing human. And we thank you for being here. We're super pumped, very excited. Our viewers are very excited. Thank you for coming on the show.
Chad, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
And for making the journey down here from Akron. I mean, I really appreciate you guys coming on down.
It's an adventure. It's
Definitely.
beautiful down here. Yeah.
Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, we've been looking forward to it. And if you're listening, Riza says hello from Akron. She wanted to make sure that we said hello because she helped
Hello.
put us
Hello,
into
everyone
contact
from
with
Akron
you.
as well.
Akron loves Harvey Lewis.
I love it.
So we've got a lot to cover, Harvey, we chatted a little bit about this off camera. What motivates me the most about doing these interviews is backstories. So let's go back to the young Harvey Lewis. As a child, you were born in Wheeling, West Virginia, correct? So tell us a little about your childhood and family growing up, and kind of what got you into running.
Yeah, so growing up, I was fortunate to live in a small place called Chalk Hill, Pennsylvania when I was really young. And my father was a coal mining engineer, but he really loved nature and outdoors. And my mother, she was an artist, a nurse, but she also, for her passion and hobby, would love to paint scenes of nature. Mm-hmm. And so I got introduced through my parents and my sister into the great outdoors, and I just fell in love with that. My dad would take us on these adventure hikes, and I'd fall over 12 times. And you had to just want to be carried back when I was 4 or 5 years old. But it definitely left a huge impression on me in terms of just that love of nature and wanting to get outdoors.
That exposure, being out there and just soaking that in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have a little meltdown over here.
Yeah, she loves the nature too here, we can see.
Yeah, see, that's what it is, the kids.
We're out of the Akron proper area. I thought that was a tropical bird at first. Turns out it's an upset child.
Yeah. One correction on the world record. I do have the world record for the Backyard Ultra for Big's Backyard, involving both the trail for 12 hours and the road for 12 hours. But
Gotcha.
Back in May, a new record was set superseding that. It involved the same a one-loop course so it's a little bit different than the 2-loop, which is kind of the traditional backyard format. So technically I still have a record, but when it comes to the total distance, that was exceeded
This May.
This May. Yeah,
Gotcha.
by a really awesome Belgian runner. So, but yeah, the Backyard Ultra is just a really exciting format, and it's something that has just exploded over the last like 4 or 5 years. So it's really neat to see people participating from like India to Pakistan and Brazil, all these different places all over the world, including the United States, and it's just quite an interesting avenue that ultras have taken.
Yeah. And that was Laz's idea. That was his brainchild.
Yeah, he dreamed this up in high school when he was maybe a junior, I think it was. But he had the first one happen in 2011, and I believe the farthest person went like maybe 18 hours in that first one, maybe 22. It's amazing to see how much further people are traveling, and like the sport has moved in just a decade.
Yeah. Wow.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Once that person goes, to that, beyond that first threshold, and it just seems like it's possible, right? That we can push it further, we can go longer.
Yeah, there's a big element in, I think, any type of racing, and especially ultras, when that happens personally or within the community.
Yeah.
And you can think about like Bannister and like the mile, and how it took so long to hit that sub 4 minute threshold. Once he did it, people saw his formula, and also like it gave them the hope that they could do it. And now it's been done by like
High schoolers
Yeah,
are
it's
doing
incredible. I mean, it's still like an incredible feat.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that impact on us. Like when we hit our highest mark in something, it sometimes makes it harder for us to move beyond that.
So going into that race, it makes me think. I mean, because you said I'm not quitting, right? That was a quote from you.
I had this mindset that I wasn't gonna quit, but I think a lot of people could have that mindset.
Sure.
And it's really difficult. And also, I got into I think it was maybe the third day, and I saw that both Mori and Chris were also in the similar mindset, and it kind of made me for a short while think like maybe it was not a rational plan. That it might not be the safest endeavor for everyone to think that they're never gonna quit. But
That has got to be mind-blowing, to be in a competition with someone who is equally determined.
Yeah. So
And to work so closely.
yeah, well, it depends on the race. I've been in backyard ultras where we have worked closely in terms of our energy, and I've been in backyard ultras where we've been more juxtaposed. So like, for example, with Courtney and I, when we were in the backyard ultra in, I believe, 2020, for she and I, like, we had been on the team together in the 24-hour world championship race. We've had experience with each other, and like racing against Courtney, I didn't feel like this sort of grapple between us that we were trying to take each other down. It was more like, okay, like we're just gonna push as far as we can go, and actually it's better for us to have each other there. Like we enjoy that. So like that's the interesting thing about the backyard ultra, because there are times like I think it is even right now, there's a backyard ultra that's happening up in northern Ohio called the Timberland. I think it's happening right now. But anyways, what will happen is if one of the runners drops out right now, the runner that stays is gonna get the silver ticket to go to Laz's main event in October. If they both stick in it and they stay beyond 53 hours, then both of them will ultimately get into the event down in Tennessee, because there's like an open opening for anyone that gets like the highest distance. And right now that's like there's only 15 slots, and the 15th slot is like 53 hours. So so hypothetically, if these two runners work together and they manage to push each other to run and get beyond 53 hours, and they ultimately don't care who wins at that point, they'd both get into the race.
Yeah.
But if at this point they're both trying to psychologically outdo one another and batter on each other, then they may go down faster, but one person is going to ultimately get a ticket to October's event. So it's kind of interesting.
It is. Yeah.
And with Maury and Chris, like, I don't think there was any like, evil thoughts towards each other, but there was definitely much more contention, and there was less communication between us. And so I mean, I felt much more that it was like contentious, like in terms of like our battle with one another. It was respectful, but we were like, it was like two championship football teams going head to head, and like, it was not like a sort of cordial sort of battle, like, all the way. It wasn't. I think we have total respect for one another, but I'm just saying there's different types of backyard ultras, and it depends on who's there at the end. When Guillaume and I were there in 2017, there was a lot of like funny banter back and forth, and he was teasing me like a brother, making jokes, and I'd tease him back, and like we were kind of pushing back and forth on each other, but there was also this sort of like light humorness about it. So we enjoyed each other's company also. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because it depends a lot on the personalities of who is left in the race. Yeah. When it comes down to the final runners, how that's going to play out.
Dynamic.
Yeah. In the first day, it's much more like lighthearted. Everyone's just kind of conversational, and it's almost like a game of Survivor. Because you have somewhat little alliances in the first day that sort of form a little bit, maybe towards the end of that first day, and you have people who already knew each other, and then you have people that like get to meet each other, and there's all kinds of things happening. But then ultimately, things sort of dynamics change as people fall off and people get more tired. And when people are really tired, they have different sides. They may show like, maybe some people, they can deal with that sort of, I don't like to call it like misery, but because I don't ever think of it that way, but some people might think of it as misery. And if they're in that moment, they may be sort of giddy or laughy. Like Courtney, she tells hilarious jokes, and she's real light humor the whole time. I never see any dark spot. But you have someone else, and they're just like, they don't act the same way as they do when you're around them, like in another experience. So it's interesting. Very interesting, the works of it all.
How would you describe your personality at that point?
Yeah, it could evolve for sure. I tend to keep like an upbeat like attitude about stuff.
Yeah.
So when I'm like, I tend to, when I'm actually engaging another runner who's like maybe one of those last few runners, it's sincere. Like I'm actually like, hey, how you doing? So I'm not sure like, if some of the runners at events have, when I was at the very end, if they wondered like, what's Harvey's motivation for engaging me? Yeah. But for me, it just helps me also stay, awake and engaged, just to have that little talk with people. So I think
we kind of went ahead, but that's fine because, I mean, the stories are incredible. I guess we wanted to go back to the roots. So did you run track and field or cross country in high school? What was your first running experience?
Yeah, so my first running experience, that other than just running around the playground and running around like chasing a dog around, was actually, I remember maybe it was like middle school. It was maybe like when I was like 5th grade. Somehow I got signed up for this race, and it was probably like it seemed like it was 3 miles, but it's probably only like a half a mile or a mile at the time. But I remember it was like, they had different like pods that they sent out, and I think I was grouped with like 2 other runners. And I didn't ever think I was going to be a runner from that experience. I think I came in either like last or the second runner, and I felt like like death, you know. Yeah, so I was a chubby kid when I was growing up. I was kind of like Chunk and Goonies. I could grab like the rubber and just kind of shake, you know.
Goonies
Yeah, so
reference.
like, yeah, that's the normally only time I was running is if I was running from like my older best friend Frank, and he was like chasing me for something I did wrong, or I was running to the ice cream truck, or something like that. You know, we played like a lot of street football.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't like a runner. My sister, like, she did cross country, and then I wanted to play football. So I like 8th grade, I played football. I was like 3rd string defensive tackle. But
You were a defensive tackle?
yeah. I mean, I was like, but what happened was the coach would like send us out to run laps, and I kind of liked the conditioning aspect. So I liked the challenge of like having to do the push-ups or doing the sit-ups, and then having to go run a couple laps. And so even though I wasn't very good at it, I actually kind of liked that. And then I did track in middle school, and I never ran cross country. And I ran like track every year in high school, but I never finished. I think like I usually finished towards the back of the pack. Like I never even finished, I think, in the middle of the race, like middle grouping of the race. So it wasn't until later I became a more competitive runner. And like you had mentioned, like all these races I won. The first race I won was when I was 28 on a beach with like 14 people. It was a 2-mile race. And then the first race I think I won with ultras may have been, I had started ultras back in the 90s, but I didn't win my first race, I think, until maybe like 2010. And I won the Fans 24-hour race. That might have been the first one. So it's been you know, it was an evolution.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, like how you can, like for example, yesterday I ran a 5K in town.
If I'm wrong, you ran the 17s yesterday.
Yeah, 17:44, which was for me pretty good because I have done zero speed work at all other than just, yeah, I'll pick it up and stuff. I mean, I do slower speed work, but I mean, to run a 100 plus mile race, I'm not needing to really run like a 5:33 or 5:43 mile. But yeah, so it's cool to be able to do that. And it's also like compared to high school, my fastest mile in high school was 5:39. So when you think about like, wow, like I'm almost able to run.
You were
a
averaging
5K,
540 something in your
5:43.
Yeah.
So I'm almost able to run a 5K at my best mile I was doing when I was in high school. And that's so cool because, well, I mean, I think it's cool because a lot of times in our country we think, okay, you reach your peak in physical, like your physical prowess when you're like a late teens or in your 20s. And yeah, it's like my first ultra was when I was 20, and I did 81.75 miles, I believe. And now, like I can like almost double that distance. And in the fans race, like I did in June, I was able to like almost double the distance that I did when I first did the race.
First time,
like
yeah.
26 years ago.
Yeah.
So I love that I feel like, you know, there is a bell curve, and like, you know, my friend who's 100, yeah, he's really challenges himself, and
Yeah.
it's not like, yeah, of course he can't run the same times he was running when he was 88, but I think it is powerful for like everyone, because it transcends everybody, that we can, you know, push and grow, and like we're not limited necessarily by age. That's what I mean. That's what makes it, like, that's what I love about it. Not that I did it, but just that, like, you know, we can like push ourselves and like grow, you know, in so many different ways in different times in our life.
Absolutely. We talk a lot about that. We've got some older folks in our running group up there. I mean, we're some of them. I turned 40. Larry's in his 50s, and
Young man.
I know.
Young man.
But we say the same thing. It's so fun and interesting to, as we're aging, taking care of our bodies in a way and being intentional about the things that we're doing and eating in the way that, you know, and watching the performance like kind of get better, which is cool.
Future is unwritten, right? I mean, when you were in high school and you were running, you know, in track and field, and your best mile was a 5:39, if you could look into a crystal ball one day and say, I could run a 5K and average just about like you. But that's the power of the mind.
I would never believe that.
Yeah.
Never believed it.
But that's such an inspirational story for like young people to hear. I don't know if your students realize. Do they realize that like the Michael Jordan of ultra running is teaching them? Do they ever like take account of that? Like this guy is a phenomenal athlete. Do they ever ask you questions about that?
Thank you very much. Honestly, like all my students, they have their own specialties, and like they're so gifted in areas like ballet and fine arts and creative writing. So we all kind of come to the table with different talents, but yeah, some of them have taken an interest in running, and there are some that like they know I'm a little out there on the running side.
Oh, I bet they do.
Yeah, they think I'm a little crazy for sure.
Yeah, you're running school.
Occasionally I'll like race one of their buses, you know, like from a couple miles away, and once in a while I might beat it. You know, so that gives a little like, oh geez, Mr. Lewis, what were you doing? Like running down the street looking like crazy man, trying to beat our bus.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
I mean, so we were gonna ask, like, when was there a point where things kind of started getting more serious for you? Like, was there a switch that went off? You're like, okay, like maybe it's time to really kind of dig into this.
Actually, there were kind of many switches along the route. Yeah. So, definitely a big switch was actually when I first discovered ultra running.
Okay.
So when I turned 20, I went through like this personal sort of like revolt inside, or I don't know what you want to call it, like I guess metamorphosis perhaps. But my mother had a stroke, and I also became, at that same summer, I found out that my college girlfriend was pregnant. So I went through like these transitions in life, and I went from being a full-time college student to being a full-time assembly worker and going to college in the evening. So I went through a lot of changes and responsibilities I had added. And during that time, I also kind of sought out more information because my mom had the stroke, and what I had traditionally been conditioned to believe through culture and also just discussions with my mother previously, who was a nurse, about because I had actually had some little interest in like eating differently, like eating vegetarian back when I was in high school, and I had mentioned it to her, and she had really kind of discouraged me from that one. I mean, my mom's very encouraging. She encouraged me to go out and run the marathon when I was 15. So she really opened up a lot of doors for me. But with that one, she said, yeah, you know, you really need to eat meat and drink milk to have enough protein. And and it was difficult. There was like I remember one day I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this out. But there was one girl in my class who was vegetarian, and like there was no options in the cafeteria line. So that kind of made me revisit that thought, and I just started reading a lot. Like I really started like researching it, and got out a bunch of books at the library, and because I was wondering, you know, my mom had a stroke at 54. You know, it's a very young age to have a stroke, and what I read kind of like influenced my thinking, and I decided that I wanted to give it a try of like eating more vegetarian. And so I started off like eating vegetarian, but I would eat fish still and like eggs and dairy for a couple months, and I literally felt a significant difference within like 2 or 3 weeks, like just in terms of my energy level, in terms of like my regularity, which kind of sounds like insignificant, but it's not. And in terms of just my immunity. So I just kept on down that road, and within a couple of months I had like cut off the fish, and that's when I started running more, and like noticing that I didn't feel tired after I ran, you know. So
the recovery, you definitely felt it in the recovery, that your body was bouncing back faster.
Recovery was much more rapid, and I guess it's due to a number of things, but inflammation is one thing, that you kind of have lower inflammation when you're eating more of that way. That was a big transformation. It kind of was one of the switches. And then another switch happened when I got introduced to the ultra community. So I ran that first fans race, and like the last hour is like an optional out and back on their fans 24-hour race. You can go out and back. It's like a 400 meters, or you can continue and do another loop if you can afford to do that. If you don't finish it, then you don't get the loop counted. So a lot of people will like end up running this out and back when it gets to last like 30 minutes, and I did that, and what was kind of like another eureka moment for me was the last 20 minutes I was just running, and I just felt this like euphoria. I was getting that like kind of tingly runner's high, and I was just like, yeah, go. And I just was running faster than the last 20 minutes I had the whole entire race. Even though I had, and at my goal at that run, I never, like, my goal was just keep moving, whether it was walking or running. I did a lot of walking. So to hit 81 point, I have to look up the, whatever it was, 81.25 miles, it was just like, that was huge for me. That was like, finishing bigs is the champion for me. Like to run 81.25 miles, that was giant. Like I never thought of anything like that before. And then also the running community, like the people that were there, like I got real fired up the last 10 minutes. And I mean, I was like the last few strides back and forth. I mean, I was trying to go 100% effort, and people are just cheering and yelling and hollering. And like that was the camaraderie amongst the running community. So like the ultra community is really another switch, because they're just really, I think we as a sport, we tend to be very supportive of one another. It's like I'm as happy to see the person that finishes last, and actually I'm probably more happy to see the person finishing last as I am the person that finishes first. Not in all instances, but a lot of times the people finishing towards the back have actually expended even more efforts to get there. You know, so it's I think it's, you guys talk about like every runner has a story, and I think that's remarkably true especially amongst ultra runners. And so I really love, and all runners in general. I think runners in general, like, you know, we tend to be a supportive group. You know, towards each other. And like when I'm running around the community, if I see a runner, I'm always gonna try and say something too. You know, because that positive statement to them reflects back to me. So it's a nice experience. And then there was other switches, but that's two. But I've got so many switches. We'd be here all day if you guys want to hear all the switches.
Well, that's interesting.
But
I mean,
those are two of the big ones.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool, and that's an enlightening perspective. Like those aren't things that you would really think about, you know, and so those things encouraged you, I guess, in a way that was like, yes, this is where I want to be, right?
Definitely, yeah, definitely, and it's pretty neat. Sue Olson, like, she was like the champion back in the 90s. Like, I mean, at Fans 24-hour race, she often won the race outright and beat all the men and all the women back in the 90s. And, you know, today we see that a lot more with Camille and Courtney, you know, beating all the men, which I think is pretty amazing. I love that. But back in the 90s, you know, that was even pushing against cultural norms even more. And I mean, Sue Olson, like she ran Fans or Grandma's Marathon 2 weeks before delivering her baby. And yeah, I mean, people, it's just remarkable. Yeah, but I mean, she always had a smile on her face when she'd be like at mile 130, whatever you call it. Like, she'd just still be smiling and like having that same stride, like, go Sue. She's just crushing it, crushing me and crushing it. But yeah, and it's great because I've kept in touch with those people. Like, even when I did Fans this June, Danny Ripka, Sue Olson, Ed Rizzo, the people I've been seeing for decades, they're still out there. Ed's 84 and he's still out there competing.
Wow.
Yeah, in a 24-hour race. I love that.
Do you try to do that every year?
No, I don't, because I have done it the last 2 years. and I would definitely love to go back. I think I've done it now 8 times.
Okay.
So there's a 1,000-mile, pinnacle you can hit as well, and also it just has significance for me.
Sure,
But for me, it's a little bit. It interferes with other races. Like even this year, me doing fans probably impacted my Badwater race a little bit because they were close together. So I would probably do fans like occasionally, like every decade. So I mean, I might do it like 2 or 3 times a decade.
Yeah.
So I'm not planning to stop. I hope to be still at Brazil at 84,
Yeah,
going
yeah.
out there and doing it for the bazillion time, So we'll see. Hopefully we can keep doing that.
Yeah. Keep moving. Keep moving.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch around a little bit, Chad. And I know
Shift it
this
up.
was where you were at, but we can just flip it. But talking about just staying healthy and being able to do this into your 70s, 80s. I know you had an incident in 2004 that required some extensive spinal surgery. So how did that affect your running, your racing, and life in general for you?
Yeah, well, you hit switch number 3. So,
There we go.
Yeah, so definitely breaking my neck and surviving a near-death experience, that definitely causes one to be more.
So what exactly happened, Harvey? Can you
Yeah,
I don't
so
know if
basically it was the 4th of July, and I had run a very popular race in Cincinnati. It raises funds for Children's Hospital, I believe, or I'm sorry, for cancer research. And I was heading over to pick my son up, and I was driving on the road that we had like a first rainstorm in maybe about 8 or 9 days, and I hit an area that just happened to have like an oil buildup. My car went, like, there was a car in front of me, maybe 100 meters, that spun out, and like there was no way to stop. So my car went off the road, and I literally like violently flipped over like 3 times, 4 times in this Saturn. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, I didn't really plan to die this way today. I wasn't planning to die today. And like when it flipped over, the top of the roof literally came and hit my head. I could hear my neck crack, but I didn't know I actually broke my neck. So I used to think before that if you break your neck, you die.
Right.
You're pretty much. So I ended up upside down. I did my safety belt, fell to the roof of the car at that point, and then I tried to kick out the glass. I'm thinking, this car is going to catch on fire because that's what it always does in the films, And I literally kicked the glass as hard as I humanly could from the inside, and I couldn't break the glass. So like that was all right. So I'm like, okay, this is not good. But this is all happening like within seconds.
Super
and like when you're
quick,
flipping over, it's like all of that is processing your head, like in just fractions of a single second. Like you're processing these things. So I looked out the back of and I saw that there was glass that was broken in the back of the windshield. So I was able to squeeze out the back and just kind of get my arms cut up a little bit. But then when I climbed out, I was like, I just felt like there's no price that is equivalent to like that. Like when you say, okay, you think, okay, you're probably gonna die, and then you climb out and you're like alive, and it's like, it was just a beautiful feeling of things I had still wanted to do in life. And so I went, by a little bit of time, the fire department arrived, and another person crashed into my car. It was a real disaster in terms of that little that area. And they gave me the option to choose where I went to the hospital because I was really acting calm, and they didn't know I actually broke my neck.
Yeah.
So I said Good Sam, which is not their like trauma hospital. And I went to Good Sam and basically had an x-ray, and the young doctor is probably 28, who was serving his residency. He said, well, we need to get you like stabilized, because at that point I was getting up and walking to the restroom. They knew it was a 911 situation. So they tried this traction where they put spikes in your head and they try to like get things to be in a proper position. That did not work, and we end up having surgery. And so I have titanium at my neck and extra bone But being so fortunate blessed to survive that accident is a true gift. I just spent time last week with my family in Minnesota, and our family in southern Minnesota. We have a relative who had a severe accident on a side-by-side, and she is now quadriplegic. And she's doing amazing given the circumstances. I'm really impressed with how her and her husband have really been strong and taking this together as a couple. But I mean, for me, I was extremely lucky, and to have survived that, and then to be able to come out of that, in one piece. So I mean, the doctor said, like, there was, in terms of probabilities, like it was maybe 5% probability that surgery wouldn't work, or I could end up paralyzed or something like that. But still, that's a margin of error you don't want to mess with. That puts a level of intensity on your shoulders. So I was it's really a gift when you get an opportunity to survive something like that and walk out the other side.
And it gives you a whole new perspective on what you've been given.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So with that, people take passions different directions. Running is one of my passions, so I decided that, okay, this is something I really enjoy, so I'll keep exploring that. So I did probably approach it with a little more intensity after that. Yeah. It's just a realignment of the mindset a little bit.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Approaching it differently, more intentional, I think, for all the reasons you just described.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's something that happens there. What was the recovery like for you there? I mean...
Yeah. Well, that's one of the best things about ultra runners, and probably marathon runners, and maybe marathon and runners in general, is patience. So like that was really important, was patience. And with that accident, like just being able to walk was gratefulness. I was very grateful, because there was a chance that I was going to die or be paralyzed. So just to be able to walk, I was grateful. And so I was teaching summer school at the time, and actually I think I was in the hospital for only 3 or 4 days. Like, they want to get you in and out as fast as possible. And I had maybe another couple days at home. And I definitely felt some pain for sure. It was uncomfortable sleeping. But I didn't take any pain medicine after the hospital. When I was in the hospital, I did. And my throat was just so sore. It was the worst sore throat I've ever had, times 5 in my whole life. Yeah, maybe more than that. But
because of the intubation,
because of the going and doing the surgery in your neck, just and the inflammation and all that stuff. And then when you'd swallow anything, even water, it would just be just blades scraping down your neck. Yeah, it was really intense. But I didn't take any pain medicine. They gave me a whole big giant jar of horse pills. But I thought I'd like to try to deal with this in a way that's using my mind and hopefully find something that's not a Band-Aid, but something that is actually helps it overall, long term. So I immediately started walking back and forth to work. The first day back to teaching summer school, I was wearing a big neck brace. My students again probably thought, man, this guy is really.
What's Mr. Lewis up to now?
We thought he lost it before. This man has certainly lost it now.
Mr. Lewis is off the hook.
Yeah, walking. I don't even remember. I don't think I had crutches, but.
He needs
I definitely had the neck brace. And I remember the first day I made it to school, but on the way back I had to call up a friend and tell her I was getting a little I don't know what you would call it, delirious or something.
Sent a little distress call.
I was like, I think you better come and pick me up.
And how many days is this after the accident? You're back in the classroom?
Definitely within a week. So maybe 6 or 7 days, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's that kind of the running mindset that you're going to endure in pain. I'm sure you were in incredible pain still, but
actually the walking actually helped to alleviate the discomfort. You know, the time that was the worst was actually if I were just to sit still in one place.
Seems like all the pressure would just be in one spot.
But actually,
continually.
that movement was positive for my body. It was actually really good for the body. So I really believe in the movement, and then also like, you know, it helped with my sleeping pattern. And so that was a big thing. Is the movement was really helpful.
That's my wife's favorite expression, Harvey. Movement is medicine. She always tells me that. Movement is medicine.
It's powerful. Movement is medicine.
We gotta get a T-shirt made.
That is true. Movement is medicine.
Yeah.
And then it took me 2 months of just walking back and forth to work every day. And then I started to run like after that. And then I ended up doing like the Columbus Marathon after 3 months from the accident. And I ran I think a 4 hours and 30 minutes or something. And like prior to that, like I had run maybe like a 3:15 or somewhere around that range, like above the 3:10 mark. And then it took me a whole nother year to maybe get back from the accident to like that 3:10 mark. And then I just started like chomping away, making it faster and faster. You know, and up to like a couple years ago, I ran like 2:45:58. So, and I think it's possible. Maybe I can still do a little better than that. We'll see.
That 5K race yesterday,
We'll see. Well, I need to work on that too. Yeah, we'll see.
There's always work to be done. Impressive, my friend. That's such a great story. I mean, and we're glad you're sitting here telling it.
Thank you. I'm glad. I feel very grateful to be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you keep a pretty full race schedule. How often are you racing?
Yeah, so I do kind of believe in the principle of running something every 3 to 4 months. Like, I really think that that's healthy for everybody. To have something out there, whatever it might be in their lives. But I think having something 3 to 4 months out is really nice. So I usually have A races are like 3 or 4 months out. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. Like, Badwater and Leadville are both pretty much A races for me, and they're 5 weeks apart. So it sometimes just depends on what events are happening. But in addition to that, I oftentimes do things like the 5K race I did yesterday, or I'll like, last year was pretty unprecedented. So last year I ran 8 ultras. And I finished in the top 3 in all 8 of them. And I won all of my A races, which was the best year I've ever had. Like, period. It is the best running year I've ever had at 45. So, this year I've kind of like, I jumped into like something that was really exciting, and that was the Barkley Marathon. And that race like caused me to grow more than I have in the last probably 10 years, like in some category. Like it just caused me to like have to develop skills that I was really weak in, and I loved it. It was really both mentally and physically and spiritually. You know, it's like it really pushes you to a whole nother level. It's quite
talk
amazing.
about the you love nature, you love being out there in the wild, and that's the event for that, because you are out there.
Yeah, you are. You have to embrace the difficulty of like whatever elements are thrown your way, and smile in the most arduous challenges. You know, so it's the challenge with the Barkley is it's usually situated sometime that is giving you temperatures that fluctuate, and the area down there in Frozen Head is really erratic. So I mean, it could be, if it's in the early spring, late winter, or something thereabout, you could get temperatures that are as warm as like almost 80, and you could get temperatures, maybe down to like -10 potentially. It's probably going to average around like that freezing line, around 30 degrees. So, in the daytime it might be 65, but at night, on the mountaintop, it's going to be like 29, 30 degrees. And then you get this rain. So like the rain could be really that cold rain on you for just sometimes days on end. That's really tough for most people to handle And that kind of favors actually people coming from like cold, wet environments or conditioned to like being, hit with that all the time. So coming from Ohio, we get some cold rain like that, but not consistently. It's like, for a short season, and it's not in the time usually before Barkley. So,
Right.
it's like you might get lucky with some like 29 degree or 31 degrees rainy, cold days, but you really have to be adapt to that type of like fluctuation of temperature and fog and night and all kinds of other crazy things you could only imagine.
Crazy, crazy. That's a good word.
It's a crazy environment.
Harvey's talking about the Barkley Marathons. A lot of you probably know what that is. So this is in Frozen Head State Park in Tennessee, usually Marchish.
Yeah, it's Laz has 8 races, but his big 2 that are become like perhaps even more renowned worldwide than any other is the Barkley and also Big's Backyard now. So Barkley has not had a finisher in half a decade. So when you talk about the toughest race in the world, well, I mean, I think there are a lot of races that are tough for different reasons.
Exactly.
But Barkley is really you can't really argue with that.
Can you give a quick rundown of what the race entails? I mean,
so the race is
don't know what
on paper is 100 miles, but in practice it's probably more like 120 miles. It involves climbing the equivalent of Mount Everest 2 times. So you have to go up 60,000 feet and down 60,000 feet if you survive 5 laps. And it's really hard to survive 5 laps. In fact, half the field doesn't survive the first lap because it's really difficult to find the dozen or so books that are hidden in places that aren't open like this. It's like, oh yeah, so go down to the, that specific tree and make a 90-degree angle, find some pile of rocks, and then go zigzag around the other squirrely tree over to the side. You might meet that vegan bear over there, and you probably find the book under there.
And if you don't find your book and you don't find your page, the lap does not count.
Right?
Correct?
No, it absolutely does not count. Yeah, you have to tear out the page that corresponds to your number for that lap. And there's 2 documentaries on it. They're both like super entertaining.
The Race That Eats Its Young, I saw that one.
And the original one. So I mean, they're both fantastic, and it have like all kinds of really wonderful characters in them, including Laz. So you'll get your if you're looking for some good laughs, I'd definitely suggest it.
So you plan on going back then?
Well, I would say. I would love to go back. There's only 40 runners invited, and I think that the number of people wanting to go is definitely in the thousands.
Yeah.
So I mean, after it's a secret process, of course, but Laz, has certain races, and if you win the race, and you get an automatic entry. So like Big's Backyard is one of those races.
Oh, okay.
So if I manage to somehow pull off some craziness this time and finish first again, which would be a really tough challenge. But if I were to do that, then I would get an entry into the race. But otherwise, it would just have to be, maybe Laz wants to see me get more laughs about me falling down the mountain. Because I think I probably fell down the mountain more than anyone on the first.
What was your entry fee this year?
I
know it's usually something ridiculous.
It's something,
right?
ridiculous. Something like $4.48 or something like that. Yeah. So I mean, Laz is, he's a character.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people see him as a masochist, but he actually, has told me that he just really loves creating arenas for ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And it's. He also shared with me that his dream is to raise $1 million for charity. So I think he's actually getting pretty close to that. When you count his virtual great race across Tennessee and Strolling Jim and some of the other races he's done, he's raised a lot of money and impacted the local community where he lives, including the high school and in the different school programs so much.
That's
so I mean, it's
really cool.
A lot of people don't realize about Laz. Yeah. he's a philosophical guy, but he's definitely got a strong compass.
Yeah.
Anyone who puts that much detail into that event,
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell it's his passion. He loves it.
He loves that. I
Yeah.
mean, that is his passion.
We were gonna ask maybe like recovery-wise in between these efforts. Is there sort of a process for you? Is it how the body responds and it
Yeah.
fluctuates from race to race?
Yeah, a little bit of all those. Certainly, I rely heavily on my plant-based nutrition,
Yeah.
and I speak of that as being the most significant factor in terms of my recovery. But there's other really important ingredients like getting good sleep. Stress in life can also impact you. So if you like try to have more of a balance in life, that helps. Sometimes there are probably like 40 things I could write down, but like things as simple as like running on grass. Like I don't always run on concrete every day, but I mean maybe once a week, or sometimes it's 3 days a week, and sometimes it's 5 days a week. I'm running on trails, and I feel like that can be a little bit more forgiving on your joints and things like that. So also Epsom salt baths. If it's if I did the Badwater 146 record for the lowest to highest point, and then 8 days later I had the Burning River 100 race. It was like 8 days between, I think it was 8 days. It might have been 11 days between those two events. It was very close. And what I did was I literally like just put my body through a total like cleansing. And between eating, and it's funny because I think a lot of people think, oh, you got to eat like this tremendous amount of protein, and I do probably eat a good amount of plant-based protein, but I never really, it's very rare that I like throw in like pea protein into my smoothie or something like that. It's like I just eat like whole food ingredients, and that is really good propulsion. But the Epsom salt, Mr. Miyagi. So I'm very lucky, I know Mr. Miyagi. And so he lives down in Cincinnati, but if someone can get into like someone who does like manual work on their muscles, whether that's like a massage therapist or a sports massage or physical therapist or acupuncture, any of those kind of things, there's tremendous value to that. Like people don't, they're like an automobile. So like if your car, how many people would take their car to get serviced at least every 6 months? Yeah. Probably most people. But how many people go and get their body serviced, even though your body's, a $20 million machine plus?
Yeah.
It's like you benefit by having someone who knows what they're doing to help you to make corrections to areas where you might not have synergy between your right and left side. And if you have like an imbalance in one small area, it can throw off your entire machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of switching gears a little bit, Harvey. So being a school teacher, and I know you teach government and financial literacy, I'm a world history guy, so this kind of fascinates me. You did, in 2008, you got a grant to retrace Mahatma Gandhi's famous 1930 Salt March when he was protesting the British Empire, the unjust salt tax on the Indian population. And that was a 241 march to the coast. And then in 2009, you pretty much did the same thing with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Selma to Montgomery March. So can you kind of speak on that and what those experiences meant to you?
Yeah, those were other switches for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. We gotta call this switches.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain catalysts in terms of world history, and you think about individuals who had a incredible lightning rod to help to move society forward and inspire millions of people. And definitely two of those individuals were Mahatma Gandhi and also Dr. King. And Gandhi inspired King for the nonviolent protests that occurred in our country, which ultimately influence our constitution in terms of formal and informal ways, as well as each of our lives in this country. It's incredible. I can't imagine living in a period of segregation or the sort of hardships that people had to endure in both those nations, as well as around the world. So to retrace Gandhi's footsteps was it had a couple different angles to it. Like on one angle, it was just a personal, physical, spiritual journey for me, because I was having to endure like this really warm weather.
Yeah.
And I was in India in June. It was like probably 95 or 98 degrees, and the humidity there is not like Death Valley. It's like super high humidity. So I remember my cousin and his girlfriend had come along. They were going to cycle along with me. They ended up breaking up on like the second day because it was just too intense. Like the traffic was crazy, the smog was crazy, everything was like difficult in a way. And they ended up like going on bikes, and I said it's best. So I ended up going on my own, sort of. So I had met these just amazing Indians who were at the Gandhi ashram. That's where Gandhi had like his base, where he had like worked with his community, where he had led the protests out of, including the march. And so they accompanied me out of Ahmedabad, this big, gigantic city, growing city that it doesn't seem, it was probably over 1 million people at that time. But they escorted me out on like motor scooters and things like this, and they had like, the Times of India following along. And of course I was in my like, oh yeah, I've got this running form, and I ran a little too fast the first day. And I remember I was like, ended up in this little village where everyone slept outside because it was so hot. They had the beds out in front of these small, humble homes. And I'm just laying there, and they had the dentist come over, the community dentist come over to kind of look over me,
check you
check
over.
me out. And I just remember like kind of peeking my eyes open. It was just so funny because there were like literally like 28 people from the village just circled around me as I'm trying to sleep. They're just looking down like,
Mr.
what is
Lewis.
going on with this weird man here from his States? What's going on? But people were super generous. I met people that had absolutely, almost nothing by our standards, and like they would offer me like whatever they could, So like that was incredibly moving. A level of poverty I've never seen is what I've traveled to 100 countries, but I've never seen the level of poverty I witnessed in some areas there, where people were unable to afford like shoes or clothing. And it was awakening in terms of seeing like just that what people are experiencing today, as well as awakening in terms of like Gandhi's efforts. I met people along the journey one guy came over and he showed me a note that was written by Gandhi to his father. And just those kind of firsthand connections were just really moving. And ultimately I made it. The last couple of days I had the first and only time in my life I ever had blood in my urine. I had on the second day of that journey, just because it was so hot.
Day 2.
And
wow.
I pushed myself in that heat.
How many miles were you traveling a day?
Well, the first day I traveled like 50K, which doesn't sound like much.
Yeah.
Although I was carrying everything for the whole journey on my back. So I had a backpack, and I didn't have electrolytes at that time, so I was just getting like water and soda. So I neglected like my electrolytes. I neglected like getting enough sodium.
And Gandhi was going, was it 12 miles a day?
Yeah.
And he was in his 70s, I think.
He did the journey, I want to say, in about 20 days. It was in March, so it was a cooler time, but still nevertheless.
Which is incredible for a 73.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And like the risk that they face. I mean, they had already had a couple incidences with the British Empire where, I don't think the British, they definitely didn't want Gandhi to become a martyr. But this was a risky endeavor, like especially for those who were involved, and it also kind of sped the independence movement across the world. You know, you think about India gaining independence in like 47, and then you saw, you know, after World War II, most of Africa, you know, had gained independence in the 60s, and like parts of Asia, the Pacific, so in Latin America. So it kind of really, it had like a wider effect, and so it was fun to follow Gandhi's footsteps, and it went through Hindu communities as well as Muslim communities, and yeah, I was very much welcomed and like received incredible hospitality along the journey, and ultimately I finished when I got to the last mile. There was a headmaster of a school with blind and deaf students who came out, and it was moving. They finished the last mile with me, and it was really moving. And Selma, that's a whole nother story. Yeah. So Selma, definitely that. What Selma was for the history teacher and me, as well as a runner, and this being an American, was it was an incredible firsthand account of what the people experienced that were alive in that time, in 1965, and what they had to endure. The physical walk was like walking a backyard compared to like the potential for violent threat. There were 3 people associated with that march that lost their lives, and it definitely was made me appreciate the changes we've had, but also being there, I saw there's just so much disparity in wealth in our country, and like seeing like homes where people were living where they didn't really have glass windows, and like it looked like somewhere I've experienced in many developing countries. And so like some of the poorest areas of our country unfortunately happen to be from Selma to Montgomery, and I think that just was, you know, an experience in itself, as well as meeting the figures that participate. So, you know, a lot of people associate Dr. King with that event, but he came out to the second march and like prayed at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and yeah, he was hugely instrumental across the civil rights movement, and had, you know, some elements of participation with this event. But, you know, there were folks like Mother Cooper, who I met down there, who was 100 at the time, and Amelia Boynton Robinson, who was 99, and Amelia's since passed along. So to be able to be there, you know, right at the you know, the end of her life, and to just speak with her about these things, woof,
Yeah.
that was definitely moving, man, really moving.
Yeah.
And so it gives me more impetus to like, you know, and more drive to want to be an effective government teacher.
Do you think you'll stay in the classroom? You said you have maybe, what, 15 more years to go, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any like plans to change that up anytime soon. I do like teaching. I love working with kids. I love education. So I'll probably, you know, continue doing that for a long time. But
I think it's incredible that you're able to stay in the classroom and still maintain your level of competition. That's just, I know, because I'm a teacher, I know the demands of the classroom, and just to train like you do and compete like you do, and you're still teaching, I think that's awesome.
Thanks.
I mean,
I really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
And Arlen's similar. Arlen's an excavator, and he still is working his job doing excavating.
Arlen is awesome.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your relationship with Mr. Arlen Glick?
Well, Arlen is just a very humble guy. You know, from what I know of him, I've only had the opportunity to run with him at Tuscazor 100-miler when he was running that race. I had a friend of mine who was out there doing the 100-miler, and so I think I ran almost a lap with Arlen. He didn't really need a pacer, but he just was, we both enjoyed each other's company. It actually may have been only a half a lap or maybe a third of a lap. But from my experience with him, he's a very sincere guy, and he just loves to run, like for what I'd say like are the best kind of reasons, So it's an honor to be in Ohio and like have Arlen represent Ohio as well, in terms of like the rankings this last year for the top 10 ultra runners of in Ultra Running Magazine. I'm very grateful to have received number 5 across the country, and Arlen received number 3. So yeah, it's so I consider Arlen a teammate, even though he may not be aware of that yet. But I hope to get up there and honestly like run with him a bit more, because I'd like to like just get to know him a little bit better.
Sure, yeah,
for sure.
We can make that happen. We can have a Wrangler, Arlen, Harvey group run.
That'd be great.
Hey, I'm psyched. That's
That'd be
good.
great.
I don't know
We'll
if
put
you
it
can keep
together.
up with you guys in the hills.
No,
but
that'd be good.
He's got a
good.
special hill over there he likes to
Oh, I
run.
bet he does.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And I would venture to guess he speaks the same way about you. I mean, I see a lot of similarities in the two of you, just with the way you approach life and running, and very intentional, passionate, purposeful people. And
Thanks.
It's great to, I don't know, we started doing this just kind of for fun, but I tell you what, we're meeting some cool people doing this.
Yeah.
And
very
it's
much.
great to experience, and like you're talking about this community before, and it's just so true. There's just something different and just passionate. You just keep coming back to that word about this community in particular, ultra and trail runners. Just some of the best people I've met are in that community. So yeah. Went off a little bit there, but that's how
That's
that
all
works.
right. No worries. I appreciate that. Thank
Okay,
you.
so we don't have much time. I would love to hear you talk about Leadville a little bit. That is coming up. Are you
Yeah.
going to have to take some PTO for that?
Honestly, this is a first for me. Like, I'm actually taking a day off in the first week of school, which I know my
Yeah.
principal is probably not going to be too loving too much, but that's all right. I don't ever usually miss any sick days, so that makes up.
Yeah.
So this is really kind of an exciting race for me, and I kind of look at the opportunity to like grow in various specializations, and like I feel like this race is pretty much kind of like a different specialization, because you're running 108 miles or whatever it is. I'll figure it out by that race day. What you're running at averaging over 10,000 feet. So that's a big difference. Like living in Cincinnati, it's 550 feet, 700 feet above sea level. So I'm going to be going to the race like literally the day before. And so for me, that's going to be a trial and error type experience. And I'm just doing my best to prepare for it. So I had a little bit of oxygen deprivation yesterday in the 5K,
Okay.
but I don't know how that's going to translate to the mountains. We'll see. Doing some plenty of hills. I came back from Portugal, from the Azores, and that was really amazing. About a week ago, I was out there for a week. And like basically it was every day run up to the top of the volcano, jump into the like cool body of water, run down from the mountain, so it's like lots of mountain training. But here again, I'm back into the flatland area of our country that may people would call us like flatlanders. And so, it requires a little bit of like creativity, to come up with a system that works. But I don't have a thought that I'm gonna be like the overall champion of Leadville or something like that. But if I could sneak into the top 10 or a little better than that, like that would be pretty sweet. And so number one for me would just be to finish a race and run the very best I can. And it's an educational experience.
Yeah.
If I go back the next year or 2 years later, then I would try to improve on that
Sure.
experience.
Yeah, so the headspace right now and the level of excitement, like where you at?
Well, honestly, I'm more excited about just right here, right now.
Yeah.
Like this moment. Like I've really, especially this summer, I've kind of really honed in on the present. So I'm like, I love where we are right here, right now. And just like the fact that we're experiencing this with each other and like we're going to go run around this lake. I'm psyched about that.
All right.
But
yes.
you know, when it comes to the race, I will be excited when it, and ecstatic when it comes too. But I'm just savoring each day. You know, savoring each day, and I will be ecstatic when it comes. But every day I'm really have so many things I'm grateful for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that.
Thank you.
Again, well, I think we're running out of battery here, so we were curious about your, I guess, most recent Badwater experience, but
Sure.
talk a little bit about that and just, I mean, you know, you've done this a number of times now.
Right.
You've won it twice, correct?
Yes. I've won twice.
That is quite a race.
It is one of my favorite
Is
races
it?
out there, and it's this year's Badwater was arguably the most emotional in terms of many things, especially like seeing Kelly out there finishing the race, but like even. Just it was quite remarkable. Like she was running against like cutoffs the whole race. So she hit mile 10 and she was feeling nauseous, and she basically was surviving off of water and 90% of the time. So I was concerned for her, and also I want her to have a really good experience, and also happy that ultimately the last 12.2 miles like ended up being the best part of her race, like finishing up the mountain. And then there was Bob Becker. I mean, his finish at the race at age 77 was the most remarkable finish I've ever seen in ultra running. I mean, have you guys seen the video?
I have not. Did you?
Oh my
see
God,
that?
you didn't see it? I
No.
think you,
Yeah,
no, maybe
you
didn't.
gotta watch it. Like it's he did basically a on and off bear crawl every 10 to 15 meters for like the last 20 minutes or 30 minutes of the race.
It was
I've never seen
incredibly
anyone do
moving
bear-
just to watch.
Bear crawl like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and there's plenty of other things.
sure.
But I had some experiences out there,
Yeah.
especially after the race too. So
Again, part of why you do this, right? I mean,
definitely.
yeah.
Well, I'll tell you
Fantastic.
this. Our buddy back in Akron, Riza, when I first asked her about interviewing you, she said, Larry, Harvey knew me from nowhere. I went up and introduced myself at the Burning River. Correct me if I'm wrong, Riza, but she said he had the biggest smile on his face. And Chad said the same thing. So that brings us kind of to the conclusion. What is it about running that brings you the most joy? Because it just seems like you are full of joy. I mean, about everything, but obviously running is all of our passions. So what is it?
Thank you. There are so many things. It's hard to like just say one specific thing, because running is many things to us. Like it can be like our therapy, it can be our playtime, it can be it has a million different sides to it. And but I think what I just really enjoy is just like I do love races, but I probably just enjoy just going out and running like on a day like this around the trail here, and just letting go of everything that is part of our hectic schedules, and just appreciating the power of being able to move.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, usually we have a goodie bag. We're still rolling. We forgot our goodie bag, but we brought you a gift from Akron. We did stop at the, what was that place
The
called?
Go-Asis.
The Go-Asis. We were going to get you a beef jerky, but we thought, bad idea. So we did bring you a little gift from Akron. It's our running club.
Thank you. Wow, I love it.
The Lone Wranglers Running Club.
That is fantastic. I love that.
Just a Wrangler from Akron.
That is really nice.
You can Sharpie out Akron, put Cincinnati.
No, I love that.
Circle
I
Bell.
love that. That's classic.
So,
Beautiful. Thank you, guys.
well, thank you so much, Harvey, for meeting us.
Definitely
Really.
been a joy.
This has been
Thank
awesome.
you. Cheers, man.
Awesome.
Very good, Larry.
Very good.
Very
Thank
good,
you.
man. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
And we're going to get on a run right here with Harvey
Bam.
around the lake.
We're going to take a spin.
And our next guest is going to be, it looks like Ann by Tongue from the Akron Marathon.
That's the way it's
And our
shaping
buddy,
up.
DJ.
Forrest Get 'em Gump.
Yes.
He's coming on the show. He
Yeah.
might spin some tunes for us, too.
Oh, that'll
so
be
we'll see
exciting.
what
I
happens.
love it. All right.
Great.
All right, we'll see you next episode.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.
Highway when it's late